get my good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are coming to us from. My name is Laura Obert. I am very excited to be here with you today. If you can go ahead and in chat, share what district you're coming to us from and what grade you are currently teaching while we wait to officially get started for our session. I see Los Angeles, Omaha, awesome, Knox County. I see lots of elementary teachers in here so far, fourth grade and third grade being the popular. And we have an eighth grade teacher. Thanks for sharing, Jessica. Pennsylvania, eighth grade, science. We have some more middle school teachers joining in or sharing with us. Excellent. And then we have Illinois, Chicago, or Chicago, Illinois, fourth grade. So we have a really good mixed group in here between our between elementary and middle school. I haven't seen any high school teachers in here yet, but really quickly, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Laura Obert. I am so thankful that you guys are joining in with us for Summit this year for 2025. What we're going to be covering in this session is ways that you can engage your students, minimize grading time, and maximize the fun inside of the classroom. So we have a couple of great tips to kind of help you save some of that instructional time by utilizing those lesson games and engaging ways to drive instruction, as well as ways for you to save some time when it comes to grading. Couple of housekeeping items that I want to cover with you. As we talked about before and you've seen in your past sessions, if you are wanting to communicate just like we did, where I was asking kind of a whole group response from everybody, the chat is the best way to do that. If you are having a specific question that you would like for myself or Brian Thomas, who is joining in and assisting me, you can go to our Q&A. The Q&A is where it's not going to get lost. So if you just noticed, there was so many of us, we have 57 attendees right now. So that chat is moving really quickly. If you ask a question inside that chat, we may miss it as it's continuously moving. But those Q&A is where anything that you ask, we will make sure that we either answer directly by typing the answer to you, or we will then pull it to a whole group response. And if we think it's something that would benefit everybody. So I appreciate you guys for following along with that. We just kind of covered where you guys were teaching from, so we're going to go ahead and skip that. What we're going to be taking a look at in today's session is we're going to be talking about best ways to access data and have that data drive your instruction. So we're going to take a look at that, as well as ways in which we can engage our students and still get feedback in terms of where they are with their learning without having to have them on a device. Because we have our kids on devices quite often, and sometimes they need a break from it. Sometimes we want them engaging whole class in different ways. And so we're going to brainstorm some ideas of how we can take these digital resources and these other ways that we can access students' data to still drive that instruction inside of our classroom, and then minimizing grading time. Who doesn't want to look at minimizing grading time? So when we get started in here, we're going to jump in live. And so where I'm going in is, I knew we were going to have a very big mixed group in here. So I'm in our fifth grade America's Past, which is our Social Studies Alive program. The resources that we're going to take a look at here in social studies are the same resources that you have available to you in science. So for all of those science teachers that we saw coming in, this is the same resources for you. And as mentioned, the resources that we're looking at here in elementary is going to be the same resources that you have available for you for middle and high school as well. So taking a look first, one of the topics that we want to talk about is how we can access students' data to drive our instruction. In my teacher subscription, I'm currently in my teacher subscription. On the left toolbar, if I go ahead and I access my grades, and I am going to make sure that I access my grades and that I am able to see all of the work that my students have done. If you give me just 1 second, we're troubleshooting this. But I'm going to be able to go to my gradebook and see all of the work that my students have done. And from there, I'm going to be able to see if my students are on track, if they are understanding the content that I've assigned to them, or if there's anything that I need to go in and I need to review with them. And the best way to do that is, again, going to your gradebook, grades on the left navigation, and I can see the class that I have set up in here. Now, for those of you that are joining in, and if you've used TCI in the past, This grade page looks a little bit different than what you've used in the prior years. We're in the process of creating a new grading page. As you can see here, this is a demo just so that you guys can kind of get a glimpse of it before it goes live for you. And so it's just going to be much more streamlined. The goal for this, we heard a lot of feedback from teachers saying that in prior times, you were able to see every single possible assignment that you could have given to your students. From the feedback that we received from you guys, what we've gone ahead and done is we have streamlined it so that you only see inside your gradebook what you have assigned to your students. So it's really streamlined now. Additionally, you still have the ability to use the data inside this gradebook to drive that instruction, and that's what we're going to take a look at now. I can see that I've assigned my students a formative assessment. And so this is, as mentioned, you guys are going to have access to these new changes soon. This is a little teeny glitch that we're in the process of working on. This is why it's not live for you guys yet. But what you will see here are 3 dots. These dots are going to be where you can click and you can view the trends of your class. Now, in my classroom goal was 70% mastery. So in my settings, which you can see right over here in the right-hand corner, in my settings, I've adjusted it to show me any question strand where less than 70% of my students got that correct on the first try. That can really drive the instruction inside my classroom. So what does that look like? I'm going to go ahead and click on View Trends. And here we can see that any question strand that less than 70% of my students got it correct on the first try, I'm going to be notified. Now, my goal being 70, I'm not very happy with 42%. That's letting me know that my students are far below understanding. So this is going to really drive that instruction. And I understand that I need to go back and I need to reteach that whole class. Now, if I go ahead and I see in here like a 66%, let's imagine this last question on Valley Forge was 66%. That's pretty close to my classroom goal. I might not reteach that whole class. Instead, I might pull some small group and do some differentiation in there. And so what we're going to be able to do is really use this data to drive instruction. I also have a lot of teachers that utilize this as pre and post. So if you have to do data talks within your district, this is a really great resource to be able to go in and print off this trends page, and you're able to show where those growth and gains were met through instruction in the classroom if you're utilizing this for pre-assessment and post-assessment. So we're talking about looking at ways to drive that instruction with the data inside TCI. But let's take it a step back and let's talk about what resource it is that I'm taking a look at. I told you this was a formative assessment. What I was actually looking at was one of our lesson games. Now, lesson games is one of the phenomenal formative assessments that we have created inside our TCI subscription. As you see right here, this is our lesson game for the American Revolution. No matter which program, whether you're using elementary science or social studies, middle school science or social studies, or high school social studies, they all are going to have the same format. It is always going to be multiple choice questions, and your students are always going to have 2 opportunities to find success. So if I click on one of these questions, I can see that the question and multiple choice assessment is available to me. If I have students that are emerging readers, or I have students that are reading and writing below grade level, or maybe they're English language learners, I can have the audio read out loud, and that will also read the questions out loud to students as well. So what I'd like for you guys to do is in chat, let's take a look at this question. And in chat, it said, the question is, the Continental soldiers had a strong motivation to win because they, A, were paid to fight and win the war, were promised large land grants if they won, C, wanted to prevent Spain from conquering them, and D, were fighting their home and for their rights. So what I'd like for you guys to do is go ahead and share in chat what you think the best answer is. Unanimously across the board, everybody's saying D. This is why I picked the American Revolution, because no matter what we're teaching, most of us remember a lot of the key topics of the American Revolution. So I'm going to go ahead, since everybody is telling me that D is the correct answer, and I'm going to go ahead and check and see. And I can see that we earned 1 point for getting this correct on the first try. Now, if your students got this incorrect, they still have an opportunity to find success and earn partial credit. If they get it correct on the second try, they earn half a point. So we just took a look at this whole class. We were still engaged digitally because we're doing this through a digital Zoom, but we were just reviewing this question whole class. What I'd like for you guys to do is I just put up another question on the board. Let's imagine you're inside your classroom And up on your board, you have this question displayed with your kids. I'm going to give you guys a couple of seconds. What I want you to do is think of some ways in which you can do this whole class. Your students have all of their devices closed, they are not logged in any way. You're simply running everything from the board, whole class with your students. What are some ways that you can imagine utilizing this to see where your students are with their learning? Michaela said they could use whiteboards to show their answers. Phenomenal. And that's a really easy one. Students can flip the whiteboards. You're able to really quickly scan and see, yep, my kids are on track, or nope, I need to go back and review this. I had Christine said fingers 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 for A, 2 for B, 3 for C, 4 for D. My son's teacher, when he used this in kindergarten, she taught them, and he used our social studies alive, she taught them sign language. And so the students signed right from their desk. Either of those ways, using your hands for sign language, whether it's numbers or letters, is a really quick way to be able to assess your students and see where they are with their learning. Doesn't require you to take any other materials out. It's going to be very, very quick. And again, you're able to scan the room, see exactly where your students are with their learning, and have that drive your instruction. I see that Mary Beth said hands down and heads up. That's another great resource. And then four corners. So Ellen suggested four corners. A lot of times we need to get our kids up and moving. We need to get the blood flow going, and we need to kind of break up the dichotomy of sitting in the desk and like listening to the teacher or engaging in different ways. So four corners is a great way to do that. So you can have students either go to corner A, corner B, corner C, or corner D. Now, I'm sure we've all utilized four corners, and we've seen kind of that herd mentality that can take over, where if the answer was D that we unanimously all saw, and one of our students is veering over to C and they realize, oh, nope, the rest of the class is over here in D, they might not understand why D is the best answer. So, whenever utilizing four corners, I would always have my students provide reasoning or evidence that supported the answer. And sometimes our class would be really split between two different answers, and it would really lead to a dynamic um, conversation where the students were almost debating back and forth with one another. And I would have kids say, Miss Obert, can I change and can I head over to C? Because I didn't think about that reasoning that they gave, and it really made a lot of sense for me. And so students are really learning through that conversation a whole class. And it's giving you a really clear picture of if the students are on track, if they're really understanding the content, or if it's something that you might need to review. Awesome. Ellen said she also asked several students to give their reasons. Flip that. That's a new one that I'm not familiar with. And so I can't talk on that. But Mary Beth suggested flip that. And let me scroll up and see if there were any other ones that I may have missed while I was talking. So we came up with a lot of really great opportunities and ways in which we can take this digital resource and we can utilize this whole class with our students and still have that drive instruction. So the trends that I was looking at prior inside our grade book to drive instruction is the same exact answer responses that we were just talking about, also utilizing that whole class to drive instruction. I also have some teachers that utilize this as tickets out the door. So again, if you don't want to have your students in a device, but you want to see where they are in their learning, maybe you're going to pick one or two questions, and your students are going to write that on a piece of paper, and they're going to put that in the parking lot or hand that in as they're exiting your classroom. And so this can be tickets out the door. So there's a lot of really, really great, unique ways in which you can utilize this with your students. Um, okay, so couple of other things that I just want to highlight when your students are in here digitally. If they are doing this digitally, then what they're going to do is it's going to immediately grade it. It's going to immediately provide the students feedback. So let's go ahead and get this answer incorrect. I know that it is not the Battle of Trenton. So it's asking, what is the last big battle of the American Revolution? Let's imagine students think that it's Trenton on Christmas Eve. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that in. And I did not get that correct. So I'm going to also go ahead and hit Battle of Lexington. I know that's incorrect as well. And so it will tell me what the correct answer is. So students are getting immediate feedback on their responses to help them learn and to help guide them in their instruction. Also, things to kind of keep in mind if you're using this lesson game as a digital resource and your students are going in and doing this digitally, not only does it automatically grade it for you, which is going to really cut some grading time, but your students are able to see how well they're performing and where they are in their grading in real time, and they're getting that immediate feedback and that immediate response. Coming back into our grade book, a couple of other things that I want us to take a look at. You'll notice that it's color coded. So this is going to be going live for you guys very shortly. Um, Green is going to signify to you, the teacher, that your students have turned in that item. Yellow means that it's in progress. So if students are working on it but have not turned it in, you're able to still view and see their responses digitally if they're answering this digitally. And you can see that they're in progress with it. Excuse me. And red is going to let us know that the students have received a low score for that. And then if you have not assigned it, it will not show up in your new gradebook feature. So you're not going to see a bunch of resources that maybe you're not utilizing for this specific lesson. It's really going to be streamlined to exactly what you're utilizing with your students and what you have assigned to them. Going over here and taking a look at our summative assessments. So I can see that I assigned a summative assessment to my students, and I can see all of the students that have begun taking this summative assessment. A couple of things, just like we could do with the formative, there will be 3 dots here so that you can take a look at the trends inside of your summative assessment, just like we did for our formative, to see if any of your students are struggling or below where you would like to see them. Again, my personal classroom goal is 70% mastery. So in the little settings cogwheel, I have adjusted that to 70%. Let's take a look at the settings really quickly. It is right on top of your grading page, so it is very user intuitive. In here, you have the ability to adjust your settings. You may adjust this every single assessment. You may adjust this daily. You may adjust this once and just leave it as is. It's really up to you. But what you have the ability to come in and do is decide if you want your students to see the assessment results. Maybe you are departmentalized, or you're middle school and high school and you teach multiple classes and you don't want the students to share answers while they are walking in the hallways or at lunch. And so you might not want your students to see the assessment results and the answer selections. We talked about those formative assessments and those lesson games. That's a great formative assessment to drive. Now, some teachers take a look at those lesson games and they want that to just be a review tool for your students. And you want your students to have as many tries and access points to the content as they need until they get maybe, let's say, an 80%, a 90%, or 100%. So if you want your students to be able to restart that on their own and they can take it as many times as they want, you can go ahead and adjust that in here in settings. The same thing for our vocabulary games and for our reading checks. It comes down to your personal preference. And if you want that data to drive your instruction, or if you want your students to just have this as a resource for them to study and touch points for them to practice with the content. Down below, you're going to see your default for your grading assignments. You can come in and you can adjust the grade by lesson and the numbers. You can also come down here and adjust. This is where I have adjusted it to 70% to meet my classroom goal of 70% mastery. TCI's default is 50%. If you're happy with 50%, you can leave that as is under your settings, or you can go through and adjust that to meet your own personal preference or your district's initiatives. And so you have the ability, anytime you make any changes under these settings, just make sure you click that purple update button. Because if I come in here and I decide that my students can restart the lesson game or not restart the lesson game, and I hit cancel without hitting update, it's not going to save the changes that I've gone ahead and made. So just make sure that you always hit update. So we've taken a look at formative assessments and those data trends and how that can drive instruction inside the classroom. We've brainstormed a couple of ideas on how we can take those formative assessments. We can do that whole class to still drive that instruction within the classroom, see where our students are with their learning, but have them away from the device. So let's talk about ways in which we can speed up our grading if we're, let's say, taking a look at a summative assessment. As mentioned, right over here, you will see 3 dots. It'll show you the trends. I can come in and I can click into Braden and I can go in and view Braden's response. Now, I have assigned this summative assessment digitally to my students. In assigning this summative assessment digitally, what that's going to do to cut down my grading time, any multiple choice questions are going to automatically be graded for your students. Let's say you have any true false or any drop downs, all of that will be immediately graded and it will cut down that grading time. What you simply have to do then is go in and provide feedback and give an open response to any open response prompts. So if I go in, I clicked into Braden's, I can see it was already scored for me. So all of those multiple choice has already been taken care of. The grading has already been done via TCI. And I can scroll through under Braden's assessment and see how well he was performing. So far, he did really well. Question 7, he didn't get correct. Oh, now we're seeing a couple of other questions that he's struggling with. And I can scroll through and see exactly how well Braden has performed, which questions he's struggling with, and where he is finding success. I can see question 14 is my first open prompt question. So Braden, the question in here, the students have a primary source image of George Washington at Valley Forge inside the winter. And so the students are taking a look at this image and they're answering a series of open response questions based on this primary source image. So I can see Braden's response and answer here. It's going to be highlighted in blue. Directly below that, I have my teacher answer key. And so it's going to give me guidance. Now, this is an open response, so it might not be exactly stated, but we really strive to, sometimes you're going to see answers may vary, but will include or might include. And we're going to give you a series of things that you can or should might see inside of these assessment answers. And so I can come in here and I can score Braden's assessment. In here, I can either give it a 1 or a 0. Braden gave really good information, so I'm going to go ahead and score that a 1 for him, or I could go ahead and check this off, and that's going to automatically score it for full credit points. If I give it an X, it's going to give a 0. Other things that I want to point out when you're coming in here and you're taking a look at the grading system, under the teacher's comments, you have the ability to come in and add a comment or add a stamp. So if I want to give feedback to Braden, I might decide to come in. He gave a really thoughtful answer response. I see capitalization, I see good punctuation, and he gave good details. So I'm going to come in here for Braden and go ahead and give him a check mark. So this stamp is going to let him know that he is on track, as well as him getting a 1 and earning a 1 for that answer response. Now, I can go through and see we have a couple of other questions here that are going to be open responses, but it's pretty time consuming to scroll down for every single question that Braden has answered just to get to these open response that I have to evaluate. So one of the ways that you can speed up that process in your grading time, at the top of your assessments page, right now I'm in under student Braden McVeigh, but I can also view this by question instead of just by student. So right now I'm in student and I had to scroll all the way through all of Braden's answers to see those open response prompts. If I want to just jumpstart to question 14, because I know that's the first open response prompt in here, I can go ahead and view by question. And then I'm going to come over here, and on the right hand side, it's going to give me an opportunity to select which question I want to start viewing by. So this is really going to cut down that grading time that you have with your students. Rather than you having to click from student to student and scroll down for every single one of their answers, I can now come over here to the right-hand side. I'm going to scroll down to question 14 because I know that's my first open response prompt. And now what I can do is view all of my assessment answers for that open response prompt for every single student inside my class. And I can come in here and very easily provide a score. And if I want to come in here and let's say Liam gave me a very simple answer. It's not wrong, but he didn't give any detail. So if I maybe wanted to come in and say, please provide further explanation, I can come in and give that feedback to Liam. You can see it automatically is going to save any responses that you are communicating with your students for. And so now Liam will be able to see that inside his digital subscription. And so what you're going to do is then I can come in and again, technically he got it correct. So I can give all of these students the correct answer. Let's imagine that Hadley didn't provide it. Let's imagine that Finley didn't get it correct. And maybe I want to add a stamp and put an X in here so she understands that that's incorrect. And I'm just going to go ahead and not give her full credit if maybe she did not get that question answered correctly. So this is really going to streamline. And now I see there's a couple questions inside of chat, so I'll just highlight where I accessed this information again really quickly. On your left navigation under your grade book, when you drill into any of your students' assessments under that summative assessment, you have the ability to view by student. So every single question that specific student, let's say Cole answered, every single question that Cole answered, I'm going to have access to. I can see his responses, anything that was automatically graded in TCI, and then I can view each and every one of his open responses. But if I want to streamline my grading and I want to make it faster, and I trust that TCI answered all of those multiple choice questions, true false type questions, and I simply want to go in and access those open response, what I'm going to do is view by question instead of student. And once I view by question over here on the right hand side, it's going to allow me to pick which question I want to see the responses and the answers. So for example, let's say I pick question number 7. I know that's a multiple choice, but now I can see, okay, which of my students got that correct on the first try or got that correct, and which of my students are struggling with this. So I see a lot of my
Yeah.
kids did not get that question correct. So this really is going to be indicative to me that my students are struggling, and maybe I still need to review that with my class as a whole, because only two of my students got it correct. And so you're able to view each of the questions over here on the right hand side. Now, some other things that you can
Hello.
use as, yes,
Yeah, can I interrupt you just for a second? Can you click
absolutely.
on view by student just real quick for
Yes.
one of the questions that we had was if you've got an overzealous parent and they need to see a printed result of the assessment, where that would be.
Mhm.
And if you click the drop down arrow over next to assignment score where it says post score, once you click that drop down, you'll see where it says print student results. So you can actually print out the results right there. Um, the other, just real quick, is on the filters. You can also filter to show open response even for an individual student under auto graded. um, you can click and show or hide. And if you click hide, the only ones that would appear would actually be the open response items for an individual student. So you can do it for an individual student, or like you were showing low, you can be in there and do that for a whole class, which is much faster when you do it that way. Of course, there are a couple other questions. You want me to throw them at you right
Sure.
now?
Go ahead.
Um, Christine asked, can you customize the point values on assessments so that you can give partial credit? And that's similar to Ellen, that's similar to your question about changing point values. So, Laura, I don't know if you can show them quickly how
Yep.
they could potentially change scores.
So one of the new features that we have as well, if I go over to assessments, now I have assigned an assessment already for the American Revolution. Once this comes in here and loads for you, I'm going to model a different assessment. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick, let's say, the Declaration of Independence. So in here, as I am creating or assigning, however it might look. So since we're in here, let's go ahead and talk about the opportunities that you have to really customize these summative assessments. And in there, we can talk about how you can set some information in for your grading as well. So TCI will always have a summative assessment created for every single one of our lessons or one of our chapters that you're going in and instructing. I always like to say lesson and chapter interchangeably. My teacher brain, when I think of a lesson, I'm thinking of what I'm doing for that day's instruction. But with TCI, a lesson could take you, depending on your instructional time, a lesson could take you a couple of days to a week to maybe even 2 weeks, depending on that specific lesson and what your instructional time is. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to come in and I can either make a copy, I can preview and take a look at the assessments that TCI has created, and I can also assign. And then under more, I have the ability to do paper pencil. So even though these are digital assessments, and in the digital assessments, it will truly cut down that grading time for you as the teacher by grading those multiple choice questions for you. If you have, let's say you have a student with an IEP and maybe they need to be working paper pencil, you can print off any assessment that TCI has created. You can print off any customized assessment that you have created for those individual students. So if you're creating differentiated versions, you can print those off to meet students' IEPs or 504s as well, if that's some accommodation that they need. You also have the ability to print off your answer keys for yourself just to keep as a record, as well as saving them to Drive. What I'm going to do right now, though, is I'm going to make a copy and we're just going to give it a name. And I spelled it incorrectly, no matter because I was typing too fast. Well, we're keeping it as it is. So we're going to provide and give it a name. And what this is going to do is it's going to download all of the questions that TCI has created. And this is my preferred way of coming in and creating customized versions of the assessments. And I'll show you why I like to do it this way once this downloads. So what it's going to do in here is it's going to give me every single question that we saw that was provided from those TCI developers. If I was to take a look at the preview of the assessment, all of that's going to be downloaded. Any of the questions that our developers have created, I still have the ability to go in and tailor and customize and make any adjustments that I want to. So now that this question is created, I know this is mine because it says low right next to it. And I can also still come back to that default assessment that TCI created. So you have both of them available to you underneath your assessments. But over here on the right-hand side of my version, I can see this little paper pencil icon. This is our edit icon. There's a variety of places that you can customize things within your TCI subscription, and these assessments are one of them. So I'm going to go ahead and click edit of the assessments, and this is where it's going to download all of those questions that TCI has created. So these are created by our curriculum curriculum. And you can see in here it provides standards. So since TCI is created in California, even though I'm coming to you from Philadelphia area, my account is through the California. So I can see the California standards. But I also can come in here and I just know from utilizing TCI for many years that anytime I see this little icon underneath the assessment, that I know that's a multiple choice question. So let's say again, maybe I have a student with a 504 or an IEP, and maybe one of their accommodations is they have to have two distractors eliminated. I can come in and create these differentiated versions of the assessment, as well as maybe I didn't like one of the answer selections, or I wanted to come in here and I wanted to change and adjust the verbiage inside of my question. You can tailor this to be anything that you want it to be. You have the ability to add stimuli and GIFs. Just make sure you click save to any of those adjustments that you're making. So you can come in here and you really can make any of the changes to TCI. If there's a question that you find that you don't really care for, you can go ahead and you can throw that out. Under this, you also have the ability to take a look at what we call our question bank. There's a few different question banks that you can take a look at. I'm going to go ahead and model the all question bank. What you're going to have access to under this all, and the reason why I always go to that one as my default is because there's a variety of filters inside of your question bank from there. I can filter it by lessons. So right now I'm pulling questions from the Declaration of Independence. Let's say I wanted to create a customized unit post assessment or a question or assessment that's covering multiple chapters. I can come in here and I can pull questions from other lessons. I also can filter here by who it's created by. So if I only want to see those developer questions from TCI, I can click on that. Or maybe I'm wanting to pull questions that my district has already shared out and we're giving common questions. And I want to pull that and add that to my assessment. I can filter by who created the question. And I can also filter by those response types as well as the category. So if I'm pulling this from a TCI lesson assessment, or I can also pull questions from pre and post. And I can pull questions. We talked about those lesson review games. So that's a formative assessment, those lesson review games that we took a look at. And remember, there was that first question, only 42% of my students got that correct on the first try. I went back in and I retaught that with my students' whole class. I can now go back in and I can pull that question from the lesson game in, and I can add that back to my summative to see where my students' growth lies inside the data. So you can also pull from the notebook. You can pull from summative assessments, and then you can also filter the depth of knowledge. So you have DOK 1, 2, and 3, and you can filter by the depth of knowledge in here. And so I always like to come anytime I'm adding questions, I like to click on all because it gives me a variety of filters inside this customization and this question bank to pull from. Going back out to our assessment, other things that you can do is you have the ability to create your own questions, and we give you the templates to be able to do so. So if you're wanting to create a multiple choice question, we give you that multiple choice template. and you have the ability to come in here and you can tailor and create your own questions, and you can add that straight into your assessment. Or you have the ability, if you feel like you created a dynamic question and everybody should be inside your head and you want to save them some time when it comes to creating assessments, you have the option, if you want to come down here and click share. If you were to click share for those share questions, you're going to have the ability to have that shared to two different options. You can either share it with all of TCI, or you can share it within your district only. From here, you can manage, and again, you can print off those assessments. You can assign it. You can share the entire assessment. So if you're creating a customized version, let's say you're a fourth grade teacher and you guys are giving customized assessments all across fourth grade, you can share that and share the entire assessment with your district as well. So you can have those custom assessments. But when you come in here and you click assign, some of the options that you have as you're assigning the assessment, you can come in and you can randomize answer choices, and then you can show the answer key in the results page. And these are new resources that you can come in and you can tailor for your students when you're coming in and assigning the assessments. Other things that I like to kind of highlight, when you're assigning these assessments, if you're an elementary teacher and you teach one subject area and maybe you don't have your students on devices very often, if I click immediately, my students are going to have access the minute I click save or I assign this assessment. If you teach departmentalized classroom or you're teaching middle school or high school, I highly encourage you to schedule this for later, and you can create those assignments based on your class periods. So if I know that I want this to be assigned tomorrow and this period is begins at 9 a.m. and it ends at 10, I can come in and I can set the time when it's available to my students. We're going to just make it 1 to 2. And then I can set when it's due by. I don't want them to have access to these questions after the class period has ended. So I can close it so that once that class period is over, the students no longer have access to that. So that is a couple of things that I wanted to highlight. And let me get back out to where we can adjust the grading. And oh, pardon me. Okay. So when you're coming back out here and you're taking a look at your grades, you also have the ability under your grade book and in your settings to really tailor how those students' grades are going to be. And so inside the settings is where you can adjust down here how many points per lesson or per section your students are receiving. And if there's anything you want to add to that, Brian, please let me know.
I'm sorry, I missed that. I was typing a response to a question.
No problem. So I was just showing how underneath the settings tab, teachers are able to change the grade to what they want the point value to be or the default score to be for that. Is there any other areas that you would suggest I highlight and showcase to them in terms of the grading system?
Not on grading. I know some folks would love to see other examples of games and the library, perhaps.
Absolutely.
So that would be great.
Absolutely. So when you're taking a look at our left navigation, so we talked about the lesson games, which is going to be that formative assessment. It's covering all of the content that you taught with your students. But some other games that you have available for your students is we have vocabulary games added in now as well. And so if you and your students want to go in and take a look at those other games that are available to really make sure learning is fun inside the classroom with your kids, but still give you that data to drive that instruction, we have vocabulary games that are available for you. And so your students are able to come in and they can take this independently, or again, we can do this whole class with our kids. So another way to do this whole class, I use a wireless mouse in my classroom. And so if let's say I didn't have an interactive board where my kids could get up and could touch the screen to answer their questions, or maybe I just didn't, I wanted to save some time and not have my students getting up and walking around the classroom and tripping over book bags or whatever else might be on the ground. Another way to do this and still make sure students are engaged, even if you don't have them logged into their devices, is you can pass a wireless mouse around. So if you have your students working in groups, and maybe their tables are set up in groups or they're working in pairs, they can do a think, pair, share, or they can collaborate together and come up with what they think the correct answer is. And they can pass that wireless mouse from section to section or table to table. So when you go into our vocabulary games, these are really engaging, and we're going to make sure that we're hitting on any of those vocabulary terms that your students are covering throughout the lesson or throughout the chapter that you're covering. So going ahead in here and clicking start, you'll see that this is very engaging for them. And as your students come in here and they are flying throughout the town, it's going to stop and it's going to give us a couple of other questions. So for this one, we see in the meeting of delegates from the American colonies that began in Philadelphia in 1775. Again, just like we saw with those other resources, this can be read out loud to your students. So if you have those emerging readers inside your classroom, or if you have students that are reading and writing below grade level, you have the ability to give them that support so that they can listen to the questions. So this can be, again, maybe this might be a center and you have students with headphones going in and answering and exploring these different games if you do want to get them on a device. So go ahead and chat and tell me what you think the best answer is for this question. So the meeting of delegates from the American colonies that began in Philadelphia in 1775. Was this Minutemen, the Second Continental Congress, Declaration of Independence, or militia? I see somebody said they believe that this number two, so the Second Continental Congress. We are getting unanimous votes for that as well. So great, I can go ahead and click on this. I see that I got that correct and I've earned 1 point. And now we're going to go ahead and take this flight across town again until we get to our next question. Up above, what you see here is it's going to be keeping track of how many questions are accessible or available to students within this vocabulary game. So they can see where they are in terms of the full assessment that they're doing. Again, this is another formative. And they can also see they've scored 1 point out of 4 so far. So this is another one of those really great games that we have students have access to and available to. And if we're talking about some of our other references on the bottom left-hand navigation, you have a variety of resources that are available to you and to your students. Some of those libraries that I really want to highlight. On the bottom left-hand side, you can see those games libraries. In the games library, it's going to show those lesson games, which is covering content. It's going to show vocabulary games. And depending on your grade level, it might even show geography games as well. And so you're going to see that accessible to you here on your games library. You also have access to biography library. I love showcasing our biography library. It is a really rich library that is available to your students. So we always, especially in the elementary classroom, are trying to find times and ways to save instructional time. And so the biographies, when I would do that with my students, rather than my students, let's say, researching and choosing to take a look at Taylor Swift, my students had to go into the biography library inside of TCI and they had to pull one of the individuals that really shaped our history from the biography library, and they began their biography projects inside of TCI. And then we could go to our library and we could pull more and additional information from our library as well. So our resources and our biography library is a phenomenal library. We also have a civics library that's going to be available to you and your students. And so in there, there's additional civics minded lessons that if you would like to utilize and teach with them, you have access to be able to teach through the civics library. We also have a primary source library. And in here, you're going to have access to a variety of primary sources and an economics library. So these are all great resources to use with your kids. Are there any other questions before I get back to making sure you guys have everything you need to get into your next session? Are there any other questions in terms of the gradebook or assessments or games and ways in which you can minimize that grading time inside your classroom?
Terry asked, do you need to assign the game to see each score?
All right. So a couple of things that I just want to go over and highlight before I want to give you guys plenty of time to get into your next session. A couple reminders.
Laura,
So we have a dynamic professional development library that Brian, who is joining us in here today, has developed and created to support you with a variety of different tools. If you're brand new to TCI, you can go into the professional development tab and you can explore getting started with TCI. If, let's say, you're utilizing Google Classroom, there's step-by-step professional development to walk you through setting up and syncing your Google Classroom within TCI. There's instructional saving tips and other suggestions in there. So the professional development library is a great resource for you to have access to throughout your duration of TCI. TCI creates a lot of new resources constantly. So as I mentioned coming into this session, we have a new look for our gradebook and we have some new resources coming within the gradebook that's available to you. Anytime TCI is creating new resources, we will always share that with you. The best place for you to get those updates is in the top toolbar that you have within your teacher subscription. Right here, where you see this little kind of gift box, that's going to tell you what's new and all of the new resources or any new features that we have created for you. You're going to have access to that under this little gift box icon. The next thing that I'd like to encourage you guys to do is definitely, if you want to, scan this QR code and it's going to sync you with our Facebook group so you can connect with other teachers that are utilizing TCI in their classroom. And it's a great place for people to be able to share what's working well, great lessons that they've done, ways that they might have made modifications. So it's a phenomenal resource to connect with. In here, you also have our Instagram handle, so you can share in Instagram as well. What I would like for you guys to do, my computer just went a little ahead of me. Underneath that professional development tab, you also have the ability to become a coach within TCI. So if you have utilized TCI for many, many years and you feel like you could be a great benefit inside your school district or your school building so that you can help, let's say, new teachers who are brand new teachers or first year teachers or new teachers to the district, that you want to make sure that they have support within TCI, you can actually become a coach within TCI and become that really dynamic, great resource that your district has available to. And that's underneath the professional development. What I'd like for you guys to do is if you could share in chat where you feel with how today's session went and the information that you attained, if this was super helpful, if there's any information that you feel maybe we could spend some more time in. This is really great feedback for us so that this is going to continue to help us guide and shape what we're bringing to you guys next year for Summit.
hey, Laura, can you hear me?
Awesome. So I'm seeing a lot of
Laura,
2s and smiley faces, some 3s. Is that you're surprised and excited about some of these resources? I'm hoping that's what that 3 is referencing. Bert shared a pro tip. The off the rack assessments are built off of the lesson games. So again, you have that lesson game, which is that formative assessment. And those summative assessments are going to be built off of that. So it's really going to help that scaffolding as well as help you able to see how your instruction was able to really close those learning gaps with your students. No, Brian, I can't hear you.
test 1, 2. Can you hear me?
Okay, so a couple of other things that I just want to spend some time. You have the opportunity to earn a $100 gift card. So I shared in the prior slides how you could do the QR code. And if you share out your experience with TCI Summit, you could be in the running to earn a $100 gift card and to earn a TCI llama for your classroom. And they are absolutely adorable. So please go to one of these different social media pages and use the hashtag TCI Summit 25 and let us know something that you really enjoyed about this experience, about one of the sessions, or what your favorite session that you attended was. And that'll automatically put you in the running for a $100 gift card. What you have next coming on for period 3, these are the options that you have for period 3. So I'll keep this up here for just a minute. If you want to go ahead and exit this session so that you can make sure you're in your next session, please feel free to do so. And if you have any questions, please continue putting that in chat or in the Q&A for Brian and I to answer. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end this session because we have our next period getting ready to start. So we will see you in period 3. Thank you so much. Have a great day.